You don't know why you're here, not just on this video, but in this season of life. Everything feels unfamiliar. Your heart, heavier. Your prayers, quieter. And your soul, like it's searching for something it can't name anymore. There's a silence in your life right now that no one else seems to notice. A shift inside you, like something is being rewritten, but you don't know what or why. You're not the same. You feel it. You sense it, but you can't explain it. It feels like you're falling behind, like you're being forgotten by people, and maybe even by Allah. But what if I told you, this stillness, this loneliness, this strange in-between, is not punishment? What if it's preparation? What if what looks like a delay is actually divine timing? And what feels like loss is really sacred redirection? What if Allah is not holding you back, but pulling you deeper into something that only silence could build? This video didn't find you by accident. It was written to meet you here, because deep down, you felt something shifting. You just didn't have the words for it. But tonight, Allah might give them to you, one sign at a time, one whisper at a time, one soft reminder that your soul was never lost. It was just being led somewhere greater than you ever imagined. And now, it begins. 1. When you begin to mourn a life that hasn't ended yet. You're still alive, still breathing, still showing up. People around you would never guess anything is wrong. You laugh when you're supposed to. You nod when they speak. But inside, you're not here anymore. It feels like something sacred inside you has died. Like your soul is dressed in black, mourning a loss it can't explain. No one passed away, no one left a message saying goodbye. Yet you feel like you're attending a funeral no one else can see. It's silent, but it's heavy, like you're grieving a version of yourself that used to be alive, but quietly disappeared. You walk through your old routines like a ghost. Same streets, same faces, but they don't feel like home anymore. Even the things that once gave you joy, a song, a scent, a memory, feel distant, like they belong to someone you no longer are. You try to pray, but your heart stumbles. You try to cry, but the tears don't know where to fall. And yet, you know deep down, this isn't random. This emptiness has a purpose, because somewhere in the silence, Allah is ending a chapter He never wanted you to get stuck in. You're not depressed. You're not ungrateful. You're shedding. It's not just sadness. It's sacred separation. It's the quiet departure of an identity that served its time. An outdated self that once knew how to survive, but isn't meant to walk with you into what's next. The friendships that used to hold you, they don't feel safe anymore. The goals you once obsessed over now feel meaningless. You're starting to realize you weren't living. You were performing for love, for validation, for survival. And Allah saw that. He saw the parts of you that were hurting quietly, just to be accepted. He saw the way you silenced your soul, just to keep people around. And now, He's undoing it. Without noise, without announcements, without permission. That's why it feels like mourning, because Allah is burying the false layers, the roles, the masks, the versions of you that weren't built in love. They were built in fear, and yes, it hurts. Because even pain, when it's familiar, feels like home. But this grief, it's holy. You're not losing your life. You're gaining your truth. You're not falling apart. You're breaking open. And what's dying was never really you. Just the shell you created to survive in rooms. Allah never intended you to stay in. So let yourself mourn. Let yourself feel the ache of outgrowing everything that once defined you. Let the silence stretch. Let the world misunderstand your withdrawal. Because this isn't the end. This is the cleansing before the arrival. And when you feel nothing but emptiness, remember, Allah often empties what He intends to fill. You are not being erased. You are being rewritten, quietly, gently, in the exact way your soul has always needed. This funeral you feel in your heart, it's not your ending, it's your beginning, and the new you is being born in the quiet. 2. When your own voice starts sounding foreign in dua. You sit in sujood, and you whisper, but the voice doesn't feel like yours anymore. The words feel foreign, heavy, distant, as if the one making the dua is not the same person who made it last year or even last week. You used to ask Allah with so much certainty, so much emotion, so much clarity. But now the words stutter, they tremble, they fall out of your mouth in broken pieces, like a language you once knew, but forgot how to speak. You wonder, what's wrong with me? Why do my duas sound like they're coming from someone I don't recognize? The truth is, they are, because you're not the same. And that voice you barely recognize is actually your new soul being born. One that's no longer begging for what used to break it. One that's no longer asking to be loved by the wrong people. One that no longer sounds like desperation, but like surrender. This is why your voice feels different, because Allah has pulled you through too much for your duas to stay the same. You've cried in ways that rewired your tone. You've grieved in places no one saw. You've survived nights where even speaking to Allah felt exhausting. But you still did it, and that has changed the sound of your soul. Your duas are not weaker, they're wiser, less about asking and more about trusting, less about details and more about divine timing. You're not losing your connection, you're deepening it. You're not distant, you're just being shifted from emotional panic to spiritual maturity. There was a time you cried in sujood for people who never cried for you. A time you begged Allah to fix things He was trying to remove. A time you made dua for outcomes that would have shattered your spirit. But now your voice trembles. Not because you're unsure, but because you're finally aware that every word you speak is heard. And every pause in your dua is sometimes the most sacred part of all. That silence in your voice, that softness, that unfamiliar sound, it's not distance, it's depth. You are becoming someone who no longer performs faith to feel worthy. You're becoming someone who whispers even through numbness and still calls it love. That is a heart that Allah never turns away. So let the voice shake, let the words change, let the tone evolve. It means you've grown. You are not disconnected from Allah. You are being reintroduced to the version of you He's always known was hidden beneath the noise. And this new voice, even if you don't recognize it yet, He does. And He's been waiting to hear it all along. 3. When you start remembering things you never lived. Sometimes you close your eyes and something appears. A feeling, a place, a moment that you swear you've lived. But it never happened in this lifetime. You sit in silence and an image enters your mind, like a memory you forgot to forget. But when you search for it in your past, it's not there, because it doesn't belong to your past. It belongs to your soul. This is what happens when Allah begins preparing you for something your intellect hasn't reached, but your soul has already known. You're not remembering with your brain. You're remembering with your fitrah, that original light inside you that existed before this world ever touched your skin. You feel drawn to places you've never seen. You feel a sadness for things you never lost. You feel a longing for a home you've never lived in, and it confuses you. It makes you question your sanity. It makes you feel like you're living in two worlds at once. And in a way, you are. Because when Allah is about to awaken your purpose, He first stirs the parts of you that remember Him. Before you knew your name, before you had a body, before you had pain. That's why it doesn't make sense to anyone else. You can't explain it. You can't put it into words. You just know there's something more, something ancient, something echoing from a place beyond this life. And it calls to you, in dreams, in moments of stillness, in sudden waves of emotion, that feel like they belong to someone else. But somehow they are yours. This isn't imagination, it's divine remembrance. Allah is unlocking rooms in your soul that were closed for a reason. Rooms filled with sacred wisdom, silent intuition, and spiritual vision that can't be taught, only remembered. And when that remembering begins, you may cry without knowing why. You may stare at the sky and feel a closeness you never felt before. You may say, Ya Allah, and feel like you've said it in 1,000 lifetimes, because maybe you have. Your body is here, but your soul is older than your timeline. And when it begins to awaken, everything else begins to shift. You stop needing validation. You stop explaining yourself. You stop chasing what feels temporary. Because something inside you whispers, this isn't what you were made for. And that whisper, it's not fantasy. It's your soul remembering the assignment, the one written before you ever took your first breath. So don't ignore the flashbacks you can't trace. Don't dismiss the pull to places your feet have never walked. Don't silence the ache for something deeper, something that calls to you when the world sleeps. Because what Allah is preparing you for requires a soul that remembers where it came from and who it ultimately belongs to. This is not confusion, this is awakening. And the memories your soul carries may be the very key to what you're about to become. 4. When you feel an urge to apologize to the version of you that settled, there's a moment that comes quietly. Not during the noise, not during the chaos, but in the stillness, when you're finally alone, and out of nowhere, you whisper, I'm sorry. But you're not saying it to anyone else. You're saying it to you, to the version of yourself you abandoned when you didn't know any better, to the one who tolerated too much because they didn't want to lose people, to the one who said yes when their soul screamed no, just to keep peace that never felt peaceful. You remember the times you stayed quiet so others could feel comfortable, the way you folded your boundaries, the way you silenced your opinions, the way you smiled with pain in your throat, because you thought shrinking made you easier to love. And now, you look back at that person you used to be, and your heart aches, because you know they were brave. Brave for surviving, brave for carrying the weight, brave for making it through seasons of life, with no one clapping for them but Allah. But you also know they didn't deserve to be ignored, not by the world, not by the people, not by you. That's why the apology comes. Not loud, not dramatic, just soft, like placing a hand on your own chest and saying, I'm sorry for thinking you weren't enough. I'm sorry I let them decide your worth. I'm sorry I made you beg for love that should have been safe. And as the tears rise, you realize this isn't self-pity. This is healing. Because before Allah gives you the future you prayed for, He makes you return to the parts of you you betrayed along the way, not to shame you, but to honor the one who survived long enough for this new version of you to be born. You thought you had moved on, but healing is circular. Sometimes Allah takes you back, not to reopen the wound, but to finally close it with love. So you sit with that old version of you, the one who made mistakes, who settled out of fear, who gave too much and asked for too little. And instead of judging them, you thank them. You say, "I know why you did what you did, and I forgive you." And in that moment, a quiet part of your soul exhales, because you're no longer running from who you were. You're embracing it. You're holding it. You're finally letting it rest. What Allah is preparing you for cannot be built on self-betrayal. It must begin with self-mercy, and it starts here, with that simple, sacred apology to the version of you that never gave up. Even when you did, let it go. Let them go. And most importantly, let you come back to you. Because this next chapter requires your full presence. And now, you're ready to show up, without guilt, without fear, and without needing to apologize ever again for the space Allah always meant for you to fill. 5. When time feels suspended around you, but you're the only one who notices. You look around, and everyone seems to be moving. Their lives are unfolding. Their doors are opening. People are getting married, starting businesses, traveling, achieving, evolving, growing. And you feel frozen. Stuck in the same place, watching the world change like a blur around you, while your feet feel planted in wet cement. You try to push forward, but nothing moves. The clock ticks, but time doesn't feel real anymore. Days blur into nights, weeks into months, and you keep asking yourself, why does everything feel paused for me? It's not laziness. It's not failure. It's not because you're being left behind. It's because Allah has placed your soul in divine suspension. Not to punish you, but to protect the timing of your transformation. There are things that have not yet aligned. There are people you're not supposed to meet yet. There are places you would have rushed into and lost yourself. There are blessings that would have crushed you if He gave them too soon. So He paused your timeline. He slowed down your season. He held you in this strange, invisible stillness, where everything looks the same on the outside. But inside, you feel like the world is happening without you. And that's the test. To wait, without knowing what's being written. To trust, while everything looks still. To surrender, when your soul is restless for answers that won't come yet. But here's what you don't see. This silence you hate is where your roots are quietly growing. You're not behind, you're deepening. Allah is not rushing you, because He's not preparing you for something average. He's preparing you for something timeless. And timeless things are not built in urgency. They're carved in sacred delay. That's why nothing is moving. Not because there's no progress, but because your soul is being perfectly positioned for a moment in the future. That will make everything make sense. If He let you move too early, you would have settled. If He opened the door too soon, you would have walked in before becoming who you were meant to be. And so He holds you, suspended, unseen, still. It's hard. It feels like you're forgotten. But what's really happening is that your story is being edited in silence. Every delay, every pause, every closed path, they're all part of a divine choreography that you're not supposed to understand yet. So take a breath and stop comparing your pace to anyone else, because Allah doesn't write your destiny based on what others are doing. He writes it based on what your soul needs. And right now, Your soul needs stillness. Your soul needs space. Your soul needs this suspension to unlearn the noise, to rebuild its voice, to become ready for what can't be undone once it arrives. This is not stagnation, this is preparation. And when Allah finally releases you from this pause, you'll move so far, so fast, and so purposefully. You'll realize it was never a delay. It was a divine countdown to the version of you that needed time to become real. 6. When you feel watched, but not by people. Sometimes, you walk into a room and pause. There's no one there. No footsteps, no voices, no eyes on you. But still, you feel it. That unseen weight. That presence. Not heavy, but unmistakable. It's as if something is watching you, but not in a way that threatens, in a way that quiets your heart. You're not paranoid, you're not imagining it. You are being watched, but not by people, by the one who never left your side, even when you forgot he was there. It's in the way your skin tingles during dua, even when your voice is shaking. It's in the way you suddenly stop before taking a wrong step, as if something whispered, "Don't go there." It's in the way you feel protected in places that should have destroyed your peace. You look around for proof, but there's nothing your eyes can catch, because what's watching you is mercy. What's following you is a divine presence that records every breath you take in struggle and every tear that falls when no one else knows you're breaking. Sometimes the protection comes through something going wrong, sometimes through a delay that annoys you, sometimes through someone not showing up when you needed them, and you don't realize it in the moment. But Allah was there, blocking what would have stolen your light. And He never needed to explain Himself. He just stepped in, quietly. You feel it when you're about to sin, and your heart suddenly pulls back. You feel it when you cry alone, and out of nowhere, calmness surrounds you like a shield. You feel it when the words, "Ya Allah," leave your lips, and the room feels full even when you're alone. That's not your imagination. That's His closeness. When Allah prepares you for something greater, He doesn't just send signs, He surrounds you. He watches. He intervenes without a sound. He sees the heartbreak no one else noticed. He counts the small moments of goodness you never told anyone about. He watches the way you resist giving up. And He records it all because He knows the world forgets. But He doesn't. Even when you stop talking to Him, He still watches over you like someone who can't look away. Not because He needs you, but because He loves you. And nothing escapes the gaze of the one who handcrafted your soul. This feeling of being watched. It's not fear, it's sacred awareness. It's your fitra recognizing that even when no human eyes see your pain, Allah's eyes have never blinked once. You feel Him in the silence, in the stillness, in the gentle, unexplainable calm, right after your worst nights. You were never alone. You just had to be emptied of people, so you could finally notice the one who was always behind the curtain. What Allah is preparing you for requires this level of intimacy, this level of nearness. Because what's coming will be so personal, so divine, that only someone who's felt watched by Allah will know how to carry it. So the next time you pause and feel that quiet, invisible presence wrap around you, don't dismiss it. It's not your mind playing tricks. It's your soul being reminded. You were never hidden from the one who matters most. And now, you're finally learning how it feels to walk under the constant watch of a love that never lets go. 7. When you start feeling homesick for a place you've never been. There's a certain kind of sadness that doesn't come from heartbreak. It doesn't come from people leaving or dreams fading. It comes from somewhere deeper, somewhere beyond this world. A quiet ache, a silent pull, like your soul is homesick for a place your body has never been. You feel it at random times, when the wind brushes your face just right, when you look at the sky and feel like it's calling you, when you're surrounded by people, but a part of you still feels absent. You feel like you're missing something, but you can't describe what. You try to attach it to memories, to childhood, to old wounds, but nothing quite fits, because the place you're longing for isn't on any map. It's not a location, it's a state of nearness to Allah that your soul remembers, but hasn't fully returned to yet. This isn't just sadness. It's divine nostalgia. It's the fitra inside you, the part of your soul that stood before Allah, before you were ever born, quietly whispering, "I remember something purer than this life, and I miss it." You're not broken. You're not ungrateful. You're not lost. You're awakening. You're feeling the discomfort of being a soul that was created for something eternal, while living in something temporary. And no matter how much love you receive, no matter how much success you achieve, you'll always feel this quiet ache. When your soul is craving more than what this world can offer, you're not meant to feel fully at home here, because this world was never home. It was a hallway, a waiting room, a journey back. That's why sometimes you want to cry, and you don't even know why. That's why you look at the stars and feel both comforted and painfully small. That's why the deeper you walk toward your purpose, the more you realize nothing here truly satisfies what you're really missing. Because what you're really missing is Allah, not in the way people say it, but in the way that feels like your soul is drifting too far from a light it once lived in, and no amount of distractions, no amount of attention can replace that nearness. Sometimes Allah puts that ache in you on purpose, to remind you that no matter how far you wander, your real home is in His closeness, not in people, not in status, not in comfort, but in that quiet place where you fall into sujood and your soul finally sighs in relief, as if to say, "There it is. I've been searching for this." What Allah is preparing you for is not just a chapter in this world. It's a reunion with your essence, a return to the version of you that walks closely with Him, even in chaos, even in pain, even when nothing around you feels like home. This ache you feel is holy. It's a compass. It's not meant to be cured. It's meant to guide you back to dhikr, back to purpose, back to truth, back to Him. So the next time your heart feels homesick for a place you can't describe, don't numb it, don't run from it. Listen, because that ache might be the very sign that your soul is finally ready to go where it was always meant to be. 8. When everything feels like it's falling apart, but your heart doesn't panic anymore. Everything around you feels like it's collapsing. The plans, the people, the path you were so sure about, it's all breaking, bending, disappearing. One thing after another, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. And you sit there, right in the middle of it, watching it unfold like a scene you've seen before. But this time, your heart doesn't panic. You're not spiraling like you used to. You're not trying to fix everything. You're not chasing people who walk away. You're not begging Allah to undo it all. You just sit in the silence. And something in you knows this has to happen. And that stillness in your chest, that calm in the middle of loss, it's not coldness, it's growth. It's the quiet confidence of someone who's been broken enough times to finally see clearly. That not everything falling apart is a tragedy. Some things fall because Allah is no longer allowing them, to block what was always meant for you. You've been here before, shattered, confused, begging for answers. But this time is different, not because the pain is less, but because your soul has matured. It stopped making idols out of plans. It stopped trusting the illusion of control, and now it trusts Allah, even when nothing else makes sense. That's why your heart feels calm in the middle of this collapse, because you've realized that if Allah is letting something fall, it was never strong enough to stand in your future anyway. You don't cry the same anymore. You don't pray the same, and you don't ask for things to be returned. You ask for what's meant. You ask to be aligned, not attached, to be guided, not gratified. And it's in that shift, that surrender, where the real transformation begins. You used to see falling apart as failure. Now, you see it as divine construction. Allah is not breaking your life. He's removing the pieces that were silently killing your peace, the relationships that drained your light, the habits that numbed your soul, the distractions that delayed your purpose. And sometimes He won't explain it. He'll just start taking, silently, one by one, until you're left standing in the ruins of a life that looked perfect, but wasn't made to last. And in that moment, when you feel the weight of everything slipping away, you don't collapse. You breathe. You fall into sujood. And your tears this time are not desperate. They're grateful, because somehow, even in the loss, you feel held. Even in the absence, you feel surrounded. Even in the unknown, you feel known. That's when you realize you're no longer who you used to be. You've been rebuilt, brick by brick, fall by fall, prayer by prayer. And now, you don't need everything to go right to feel secure. You just need to know that whatever does go right will come only from Him. What Allah is preparing you for can't be built on shaky ground. So yes, everything had to fall apart so that your foundation could finally be Him. And with a foundation like that, you no longer fear what's falling. You just wait for what's coming. So if you're watching this and your life feels like it's paused or breaking or floating in between what was and what will be, know this: you are not being punished. You are not forgotten. You are not behind. You are being rewritten by the One who saw what you couldn't let go of and still chose to love you enough to take it from your hands anyway. You are being prepared for something that doesn't come wrapped in noise, but in silence, in delay, in the ache that nobody else understands. Because what's ahead of you is not just a chapter, it's a version of your soul that only divine loneliness could unlock. You're not the same anymore. And that's the proof that the preparation worked. You feel deeper, you need less, you trust more, you see through what used to blind you, and now you're ready. Not because everything is fixed, but because everything that broke you was part of the prayer you didn't know you were making. So breathe, let go, let it fall away, because Allah didn't bring you this far to leave you wandering. He brought you here to reveal the version of you that only He ever saw coming. And soon, you'll look back at everything that fell apart and whisper with a smile, "That was Him, preparing me for this." And it will be worth every silent night you thought He wasn't listening, because He always was, He always is, and He always will be. Your time is coming, and when it does, you'll know it had to be Him. It could only ever be Him. Everything feels delayed. You've begged Allah for change, but silence answers you. The doors are closed, your heart is heavy, and your doers feel like they're going nowhere. But what if this isn't rejection? What if this is sacred preparation? Because sometimes, before Allah gives you the life you prayed for, He has to break the version of you that would have ruined it. 1. When you feel spiritually starved, but don't know what you're hungry for. You've been trying to feel better, but nothing works. You scroll for hours, you talk to people, hoping they'll understand, but you still feel misunderstood. You binge food, music, entertainment, not because it helps, but because silence feels too loud right now. And even on the days when everything should feel okay, your heart still aches. You smile when people talk to you, but deep inside, you're somewhere else. Tired, disconnected, not even sure what you need anymore. You try to pray, but the words feel empty. You try to sleep, but your soul stays restless. You try to distract yourself, but even distractions feel like a burden now. That's not laziness. That's not failure. That's not confusion. That's your soul starving. Not for food, not for affection, not for attention, but for Allah. Because for so long, you've been feeding your mind everything but truth. You've been giving your energy to people who drain it. You've been living a life that looks full, but feels hollow. And now, no matter what you do, you feel that ache, that emptiness, that slow, invisible sadness. It's not depression, it's not burnout, it's divine hunger. It's the space Allah created inside you that nothing in this world can ever fill. And the more you try to fill it with dunya, the louder the emptiness becomes. Because your soul wasn't created for noise, it wasn't created for scrolling, it wasn't created to be seen by everyone and known by no one. It wasn't made to chase love that leaves, money that fades, or status that means nothing when your heart is heavy. It was made for sujood, for surrender, for stillness in front of the one who never tires of hearing your voice. But here's the truth that hurts at first. Allah isn't rushing your story right now, because He's waiting for your soul to finally get quiet enough to realize what it's really missing. He's not punishing you with delay, He's protecting you from receiving a blessing that you would have misused just to avoid healing. Because you don't just need change. You need to come back to your center, to come back to the you who knew how to cry in sujood, the you who didn't chase distractions because you already felt seen, the you who didn't need people's approval because Allah's love felt enough. That's who you're starving to be again. And until you find that version of you, nothing will feel right. Not the success, not the relationship, not the dopamine, not even the wins you used to dream about. Because what you're missing isn't in the next chapter. It's in this moment, when your heart finally gets still enough to whisper, Ya Allah, I need you more than anything I thought I needed. That whisper is the beginning of real healing. That whisper is why Allah hasn't rushed your story yet. Because the story He's writing for you starts the moment you remember who you really are, when everything else is silent. 2. When everything feels like it's slipping through your hands, even the things you fought for. You did everything right. You tried to hold it together. You fought for that friendship. You gave your best to that relationship. You stayed up at night making plans. You stayed loyal when others walked away. You gave even when you had nothing left to give. But still, it slipped through your hands. No matter how much you cared, no matter how tightly you held on, it still fell apart. And now you're sitting with that heavy, unspoken feeling. What more could I have done? It's a kind of heartbreak people don't see, because they don't know the battles you fought in silence. They don't know how long you stayed hopeful, How many times you told yourself, maybe if I just try a little harder. But sometimes Allah lets the things you wanted the most slip through your fingers, not because you weren't enough, but because those things were never written to stay. You thought it was rejection. You thought it was failure. You thought it was proof that you're not worthy of being chosen. But what if it was protection? What if Allah saw something you didn't? What if He knew that the longer you held on, the more damage it would cause? Because the truth is, not everything you love is meant to love you back. Not every door you knock on leads to peace. And sometimes Allah doesn't wait for you to be ready. He ends it anyway, because if He didn't, you would have stayed far too long, in a place that was slowly draining your soul. So now you're standing here, with hands that feel empty, a heart that feels bruised, and a future that feels uncertain. But what you don't see is that Allah is clearing space. He's not punishing you by removing what you held on to. He's preparing you to hold something far greater than what you were settling for. Because He saw how much you compromised. He saw how much you overextended. He saw how you started losing pieces of yourself just to keep something broken alive, and in His mercy, He intervened. Even if it broke you, even if it felt like betrayal, even if you still don't understand why, because He knew you would have never let go on your own. So if everything feels like it's slipping, if the very thing you prayed for is crumbling, if the dream you nurtured for years is dying before your eyes, take a breath. Let your soul exhale. You are not being abandoned. You are being redirected toward a reality that doesn't require you to beg to be seen, toward a life that doesn't depend on fragile attachments, toward a love that doesn't slip when life gets hard. Allah is not rushing to replace what you lost, because He's letting your heart learn one of the most powerful lessons. Nothing you force will ever be secure, and nothing meant for you will ever slip away. So if it fell apart, trust that it was never your burden to carry forever. And if your hands feel empty now, just know that Allah never takes without preparing to give what your soul truly needs. 3. When you start longing for peace more than victory. There was a time you used to chase noise. You wanted the win, the recognition, the feeling of proving everyone wrong. You wanted to be chosen, praised, celebrated, and deep down, you thought that when that moment came, when you finally made it, you'd feel whole, complete, seen. But something has shifted in you. Lately, you don't care about the spotlight like you used to. You're not chasing applause anymore. You're not dreaming of standing on top of the world. You're just tired. And more than that, you're done. Not done in a hopeless way, but in a deeply spiritual way. You don't want noise. You want peace. You don't want the rush. You want rest. You don't want to impress people who never truly saw you anyway. You just want to breathe again, without pressure. You want a life where you don't have to perform to feel valuable. You want stillness, presence, something deeper than victory, something real. This shift from chasing outcomes to craving peace is not a breakdown. It's not weakness. It's not laziness. It's awakening. It means your soul is maturing. It means Allah is pulling you away from everything that once fed your ego to finally feed your heart. Because winning means nothing if you lose yourself to get there. Success means nothing if your soul stays restless in the process. And what looks like less on the outside might actually be the beginning of more on the inside. That desire for peace, that longing to be unseen but safe, to be unknown but held, to be far from the world but close to Allah. That's a sign, a sacred one. It means you're no longer trying to fix your life by force. You're starting to surrender your life to the one who knows best. And surrender doesn't feel like a trophy. It feels like relief. It feels like, Ya Allah, I just want peace, even if that means letting go of what I thought I wanted. Allah is not delaying your victories to hurt you. He's pausing the battle, so you can discover something greater than winning, peace that doesn't depend on outcomes, peace that isn't loud, peace that enters your bones in the quiet moments, when it's just you and Allah, and nothing to prove anymore. When that peace starts becoming your goal, that's when you know you're no longer chasing the world. You're returning to the one who owns your soul, and Allah never rushes the soul that is finally awakening. 4. When you're losing friends, motivation, and desire, but gaining clarity. You used to be surrounded by people. Your phone buzzed. Your calendar was full. Your life felt loud, fast, busy. And for a while, that felt like purpose. You were always doing something, always around someone, always chasing some goal, some connection, some excitement. But now, people are leaving. Conversations are drying up. Plans are falling through. And deep down, you don't even have the energy to fix it. The friends you used to text every day, you're not as close. The things that used to motivate you, they don't spark anything anymore. The dreams you used to obsess over, you're not even sure if you still want them. And it feels confusing, like you're losing yourself, like you're fading away from the version of you everyone used to know. But here's the truth. You're not fading, you're filtering, you're not being lost. You're being realigned, because there comes a moment in every soul's journey when Allah begins the process of subtraction, not to hurt you, but to clear the fog, to remove every person who was pulling you away from Him, to silence every distraction that was stealing your peace, to detach your heart from things you didn't realize were making you spiritually numb. And in the beginning, that process looks like loneliness. It looks like disconnection. It feels like nothing is moving. But what's actually happening is something sacred. Allah is peeling away the layers of who you thought you had to be, so He can reveal the person you were always meant to become. You see, sometimes your soul grows in a direction your circle can't follow. Sometimes your vision becomes clearer and you start noticing the truth behind people's intentions. You start hearing the noise behind their words. You start feeling the tension in places you used to feel safe in. And suddenly, you no longer fit where you once felt at home. That discomfort is not a mistake. It's clarity. The kind that comes from silence. The kind that arrives only after loss. The kind that doesn't need noise to feel sure anymore. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're just in a season where Allah is teaching you how to see again. And sometimes, clarity comes by removing what was once comforting, but no longer correct for your soul. So if you're losing people, losing passion, losing interest, don't panic. This isn't the end of your story. It's the removal of your blindfold. Allah is not taking things from you to leave you empty. He's showing you that when the world grows quiet, His guidance becomes louder. And when you finally start seeing clearly, you'll thank Him for every loss that led you back to light. 5. When you keep hitting walls, but your du'as keep getting softer. You used to pray with fire in your chest, begging, pleading, demanding relief. You asked Allah to open the door, any door. You didn't care how. You just needed a way out. But the more you tried, the more walls you hit. Nothing worked. Nothing moved. The harder you pushed, the stronger the resistance became. And somewhere along the way, your voice grew quieter. Your du'as softer. You stopped pleading like before. You stopped raising your voice at the sky, not because you stopped believing, but because your soul began to shift. You started realizing, this isn't about pushing anymore. This isn't about forcing something to open. This is about surrender. You stopped trying to control Allah with your desperation, and instead, you started trusting Him with your stillness. What changed? You did. The fire in your dua didn't die. It transformed. It became deeper, more mature, more humble. It went from, Ya Allah, give me what I want, to, Ya Allah, give me what is best. That's a different kind of prayer. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it reaches the arsh, throne of Allah, with a weight no scream ever could. Because soft du'as are often the ones whispered by a heart that's tired of striving and finally ready to surrender. That's not weakness, that's strength, that's growth. And Allah hears those prayers, the silent ones, the trembling ones, the I don't even have the words anymore, Ya Allah kind of prayers. He hears them clearly, because sometimes the walls aren't punishment, they're redirection, they're mercy in disguise. You think you're being blocked, but what if you're being refined? What if every door that closed was Allah gently showing you, you're not ready for what's behind that yet, but I'm making you ready? What if every time your dua softened, your heart softened with it? What if He was waiting for the noise in your soul to fade, so your whisper could finally be heard clearly? The truth is, when your duas grow quieter, they don't become weaker, they become purer. And Allah responds to purity faster than He responds to noise. So if you keep hitting walls, if every plan keeps falling through, if you're exhausted from asking, don't stop praying, but let the prayer change you. Let it soften you. Let it heal the part of you that thinks everything depends on your effort. Let it remind you that what's meant for you will never require you to break yourself trying to reach it. Your softest dua might be the moment Allah decides to open the door. You stop trying to force because you're no longer praying from panic. You're praying from peace, and that's when real miracles begin. 6. When you begin noticing the hidden versions of you that Allah is slowly shedding. There's something strange happening inside you lately. You can't explain it to anyone. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's real. You're starting to notice little shifts, subtle changes in how you respond, moments where you catch yourself before reacting the way you used to. Moments where the old version of you, the one who used to chase, please, overthink, explode, or numb out, feels like a stranger now. You're not perfect, but you're different. And it's not something you did overnight. It's something Allah is doing to you, quietly, patiently, from the inside out. You're starting to see that some of the habits, attachments, and beliefs you once called you were actually wounds in disguise, armor, survival modes. You're beginning to understand that your loudness wasn't confidence, it was fear of being ignored. Your silence wasn't peace. It was fear of being misunderstood. Your constant giving wasn't always kindness. Sometimes it was desperation to be needed. And as Allah brings this clarity, you feel exposed, but not in a shameful way, in a healing way. Like He's holding up a mirror and saying, this part of you was never yours. It was built in pain, and I love you too much to let it remain. You start realizing that the anger, the bitterness, the overthinking, the constant anxiety, they're not your identity. They're just layers you picked up while surviving the parts of life that tried to break you. And now Allah is slowly, lovingly peeling them off, not with force, but with mercy. He puts you in situations that frustrate your ego, but grow your soul. He removes people you once begged him to keep, because their presence was keeping you locked in an old version of yourself. He closes doors that fed your illusion of control, so you could finally return to the one who's always been in control. And the shedding hurts, because parts of you are dying. And grief isn't just for people, it's for versions of ourselves we thought we needed. But what's being born is something you've never seen before. A calmer you, a clearer you, a softer, wiser, more faithful you, and that version can't be rushed. So Allah slows everything down. He puts your dreams on pause. He delays the relationship. He postpones the success. Not to hurt you, but to protect this sacred process. Because you can't carry divine blessings with hands still gripping a false identity. You can't walk into what's written for you while wearing the mask of who you used to be. So if you feel like you're being unraveled, if you feel emotionally raw, spiritually sensitive, mentally exposed, it means you're not breaking down, you're breaking open. And every time you notice an old version of yourself fall away, say Alhamdulillah, because that's not loss. That's proof that Allah is still working on you, still guiding you, still committed to making you whole. Even when you're not asking, even when you don't understand, even in your quietest, weakest, most distant moments, He's still near, still editing the story, still shedding everything that's not part of the soul He's preparing. You are not who you were, and you are not yet who you will become, but right here, in this sacred shedding, you are finally walking the path to who you truly are. 7. When you feel like nothing's changing, but your inner world is quietly collapsing and rebuilding. On the outside, everything looks the same. Same routine, same job, same streets, same conversations. People around you probably assume you're fine because nothing about your life looks different. You're still functioning, still showing up, still smiling when they expect you to. But what they can't see is that everything is changing on the inside. Quietly, painfully, powerfully. Your inner world, the one no one sees, is collapsing and rebuilding at the same time. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not even something you fully understand yet. But you can feel it, like something is being torn down, brick by brick. And something else, something cleaner, something quieter, is slowly rising in its place. And it's confusing, because you're not crying every day, you're not falling apart publicly, you're not breaking in a way that looks obvious. You're breaking in layers, in your thoughts, in your habits, in your desires, in the way you respond to pain, in the way you view people, dreams, even yourself. There are moments where you stop mid-sentence and realize, I don't believe that anymore. Moments where you walk away from arguments you used to live for, moments where silence feels safer than proving your point, moments where peace matters more than being right, moments where you say no, not because you're selfish, but because your soul finally knows what it deserves. That's not stagnation, that's spiritual reconstruction, and the reason it feels so heavy is because old wiring is being dismantled inside you, the part of you that craved validation, the part of you that overgave just to feel loved, the part of you that begged Allah to change your life without realizing He was already changing you, piece by piece, quietly from the inside out. That's why you feel emotionally tired all the time. Not because you're lazy, but because your soul is doing deep work. Work that can't be seen. Work that doesn't post results on social media. Work that doesn't come with applause, but comes with alignment. And Allah sees that work. He sees how you're still standing, how you're still praying even if your voice shakes, how you're still hoping even when hope feels thin, how you're still trying to hold on to Him even when everything inside you feels undone. He sees the internal collapse and the quiet rebuilding. And that's why He hasn't rushed your breakthrough yet. Because He's not just preparing a new chapter, He's preparing a new narrator, a you who isn't just successful, but sacred. A you who doesn't just look strong, but is strong from within. A you who isn't just walking toward a better life, but walking with a better soul. And the world may not notice what's happening. It may think you're still the same, but the angels know. They see the nights you cried without words, the moments you chose patience when anger would have been easier, the times you sat in silence, because you didn't want to complain about Allah's plan anymore. They see you dash, rebuilding from ruins no one else knows exist. And one day, when Allah decides it's time, He will make the change visible. The world will see the light, but only after the soul is ready to carry it with grace. So if you feel like nothing is changing, but deep down, everything is, just know, this is the most sacred change of all, the kind that transforms who you are, before it transforms where you are. And Allah never wastes a soul in the process of returning to Him. 8. When you no longer crave the outcome, you crave Allah's timing. There was a time you couldn't wait, couldn't sleep, couldn't breathe without wondering, when will it happen? When will Allah give me the answer? When will the door open? You were obsessed with the outcome, with seeing the result, with getting the thing you believed would finally bring you peace. You used to stare at your dua like it was a deadline. You watched the clock. You watched other people receive what you were praying for, and it hurt. It broke you. It made you question everything. Why not me? Why not now? But slowly, almost without noticing, something inside you began to shift. You started praying differently, not with urgency, but with intimacy. You no longer rushed through your sujood just to get an answer. You stayed in sujood because you started realizing that was the answer. You stopped begging for things and started asking for trust. You stopped saying, Ya Allah, give me what I want, and started whispering, Ya Allah, don't give it to me until my heart can carry it with peace. That shift, from craving the gift to craving the giver, that's not small. That's the of a soul that's finally beginning to mature. Because Allah doesn't just give based on need, He gives based on readiness. And now, you're no longer asking for everything to happen fast. You're asking for it to happen right. You're not saying, why is it taking so long? You're saying, keep me close to you until it comes. You've stopped trying to rush the healing, the love, the provision, the success, because somewhere deep inside, you've started to believe that Allah's timing is not a delay. It's a mercy you don't yet understand. You realize that getting the right thing at the wrong time can become the worst thing, and you realized that a closed door can sometimes be the most loving answer. You don't need everything to work out fast anymore. You need it to be sacred. You need it to be something your soul can carry, not just your ego. And that's why this version of you is so rare, so beautiful, so close to Allah, because you're no longer obsessed with how soon. You're focused on how surrendered. And do you know what happens when a soul reaches that level? Allah begins to give in ways that are soft, gentle, hidden, not with fireworks, but with ease. Doors begin to open. Not when you're shouting, but when your heart is quiet. Opportunities begin to flow. Not when you're chasing, but when you're trusting. You begin to receive, not because you forced your way in, but because you waited at the gate and said, "Ya Allah, I'll wait as long as it takes. Just don't let me enter without you." That's the sign. When the outcome no longer owns your heart, because your heart belongs to the one who writes outcomes. And that's when Allah gives you, not just what you wanted, but what you didn't even know how to ask for. So if you're here right now, still waiting, still trusting, still whispering, "Ya Allah," whenever you decide, "I'm ready," then you're not behind, you're not delayed, you are exactly where you're meant to be, in the sacred space, between surrender and the miracle, between your dua and its perfect arrival. And nothing is more powerful than a soul that finally trusts Allah's timing more than its own desire. So if nothing's moving, if your heart is tired, if the silence is louder than your dua, don't walk away from Allah now. This isn't the end, it's the in-between, the sacred pause before the miracle, because sometimes the version of you that's waiting is not the one Allah will bless. He's not just changing your life, He's changing you, and when the moment finally comes, you won't even recognize the one who begged for it, because you'll be softer, stronger, wiser, and so much closer to Him. This story isn't stuck, it's being written by the one who already knows how beautifully it ends. So hold on, not to the outcome, but to Allah, because His delay is not a denial. It's a declaration. You are worth the wait. You're not just tired, you're misplaced. You've been showing up, smiling, responding, but deep down, you feel like something sacred is missing, like you're standing in rooms that don't feel like home anymore, and no one even notices you fading. But what if I told you? This disconnection, this loneliness, it's not a mistake. It's not rejection. It's Allah calling you closer, not through words, but through emptiness, not through punishment, but through a quiet, personal invitation to come back to Him when the world no longer makes sense. You've been feeling it, haven't you? That quiet feeling that you don't belong where you used to, that what once felt familiar now just feels distant. It's like your soul is sitting in a room, but the rest of you doesn't know why it's there anymore. And it hurts, not because you're weak, but because your spirit is being pulled by something higher, something you can't yet see, but you can feel. That's not confusion, that's invitation. 1. The room feels full, but your soul feels unseen. You walk into a room and everything seems normal. People talking, laughing, smiling, life going on, just like it always does. But you feel like a shadow standing in the corner, like your body is here. But your heart checked out a long time ago. You sit quietly. You listen. You nod when someone says something funny, but deep down, you're not really present. It's like there's an invisible wall between you and them, and no one else can see it. But you feel it in every word, in every pause, in every second. You look around and wonder, why do I feel so alone, even in a room full of people? Why do their words sound far away, like echoes I can't hold on to? Why does their energy feel loud, but not warm? You used to fit here. These were your people. These were your spaces. But now, it just feels heavy. You don't know when it changed. You just know that something inside you has shifted. And it hurts, not because they pushed you away, but because your soul doesn't belong where it used to anymore. At first, you might blame yourself. You'll wonder if you're becoming too distant, too different, too cold. But what if that's not the truth at all? What if this ache in your chest is not rejection from people, but a pull from Allah? What if He's removing your comfort from those places, so you no longer stay stuck in rooms that were never meant to carry your next chapter? What if the silence you feel isn't a void, but a clearing, a spiritual clearing, a sacred pause, a divine invitation? You see, when Allah wants to draw you closer, He doesn't always start with miracles. Sometimes He starts with quiet detachment. He makes you feel like you're drifting away from the world, so you'll finally start drifting toward Him. And the strangest part? No one else notices it. To them, you're still there. But you know, your heart is elsewhere, longing, searching, tired of pretending, craving something real. This is not weakness. This is not a sign that you're broken. This is a sign that your soul is awakening. Because Allah doesn't allow you to stay where you're no longer growing. He allows the smiles to feel hollow, the words to feel distant, the moments to feel empty. So you'll stop finding comfort in what's fading. He's not pushing you away, He's pulling you back, into solitude, into sujood, into silence, into Him. So don't hate this stage, don't rush it. Don't force yourself to belong in rooms where Allah has already started removing your light. You're not invisible, you're being recentered. You're not being ignored, you're being chosen for something quieter, something higher. This feeling, this distance, this emotional withdrawal, it's not a breakdown. It's a divine redirection, because before Allah gives you something bigger, He removes you from everything that would make you too small to carry it. And if right now you feel unseen by the world, maybe it's because Allah wants you to be seen by Him, and only Him, until you remember who you truly are. 2. You keep getting left out of what you used to crave. There was a time when you wanted to be everywhere, in every conversation, every circle, every plan. You wanted to be included, remembered, valued. You used to wait for the message, used to check if they thought of you, if they saved a seat for you, if they made space for your presence. And when they didn't, it stung. That silent pain of being overlooked, the ache of watching others move forward together while you were left behind. You tried to shrug it off, told yourself it was fine, but deep down, it made you question your worth. Why do I keep getting left out? Why does it feel like I'm no longer part of the world I helped build? But look closer, not with your emotions, with your soul. Because what if the invitation stopped? Not because you weren't good enough, but because Allah was protecting you from what you no longer needed. What if the things you used to crave, the people you chased, the places you felt validated in, the conversations you once found exciting? What if all of that was slowly becoming a distraction? And Allah saw that, so He began to subtract, quietly, without announcement, without drama. The messages got less frequent. The plans went ahead without you. The excitement faded. And in its place, there was silence, loneliness, stillness. But hidden beneath that stillness was mercy. Because sometimes the worst thing Allah can do is give you what you beg for, even when it's no longer meant for you. But when He loves you, He lets the things you once worshipped slip out of your hands. So you'll stop grasping and start surrendering. You didn't get left behind, you got lifted out. You outgrew the version of yourself that needed those spaces, and now Allah is pulling you into something higher. A place that doesn't need attention, likes, or validation. A place where your value isn't measured by how often you're seen, but how deeply you're protected. The people who forgot you, that was their test. The silence you feel, That's your elevation. You're being moved into a season of becoming dash. Quietly, slowly, painfully, but purposefully. And the reason it hurts so much is because you still remember the version of you who wanted to belong so badly. But you're not that person anymore, and Allah knows it. So He's removing the crumbs of comfort, because He's preparing you for the table you were always meant to sit at. Alone first, with Him. So if you're being left out of what you used to crave, let it go. Don't chase what Allah is saving you from, because what you're losing right now might be the very thing that would have blocked what your soul was begging for all along. You're not being rejected, you're being rerouted. Back to the one who saw your heart before the world ever knew your name. 3. You start feeling unexplainably tired around certain people. You can't explain it. But lately, being around certain people just leaves you drained. It's not something they said, it's not a fight, it's not even their fault. But their presence feels heavy. You used to enjoy talking to them, used to laugh without thinking, used to feel light, relaxed, even safe. But now, even small talk feels like pressure. The conversations feel forced, and after you leave, you're not energized, you're exhausted, not in your body, in your soul.
And you start asking yourself questions quietly.
Why do I feel so tired after being around them? Why does my chest feel tight? Why do I need time to recover after every encounter? You try to ignore it. You tell yourself you're overthinking, that you're being sensitive, that it's just a phase. But what if it's not? What if this tiredness, this silent draining of your spirit, is actually Allah's mercy? What if He's making certain energies feel heavier because your soul is becoming lighter? You see, when Allah starts pulling you closer to Him, He doesn't always do it through miracles. Sometimes He does it by making your soul allergic to what no longer feeds it. What used to entertain you now feels empty. What used to comfort you now feels fake. What used to keep you busy now just makes you tired, because you're not the same person anymore. And Allah knows that, so He begins to close the doors, not by force, but by fatigue. He makes the energy in certain spaces feel unbearable. He makes certain conversations feel meaningless. He makes certain people feel distant, even when they're standing right in front of you. Not because you hate them, but because your soul is being protected. You're outgrowing their version of you, the version that used to laugh at anything, the version that used to keep quiet just to be accepted, the version that sacrificed your peace just to belong. Allah is saying, not anymore. You don't have to explain it to anyone. You don't have to fight. You don't even have to announce your distance. Just pay attention to what drains you and what revives you, because your soul is telling you where Allah is calling you, and anything that steals your peace is not from the one who created your heart to rest in Him. That unexplained tiredness around certain people, that's not mood, that's not ego, that's protection. Allah is cutting cords quietly, so you don't stay connected to what would have slowly destroyed your inner light. And when you finally start listening to that fatigue, you'll realize it wasn't that you were broken. You were just becoming too whole to survive in places built on pieces. 4. You suddenly begin missing Allah without a reason. There's no adhan playing, no lecture in the background, no reminder flashing on your screen, but something inside you pauses. You could be scrolling, lying in bed, driving in silence, or just sitting quietly in a room you've been in 1,000 times before, And then it happens, without warning, without noise. You feel it, that sudden ache, that strange softness in your chest, like your heart is calling out to something, but it doesn't know how to speak. And before you can even understand what's happening, you whisper, Ya Allah, not because someone told you to, not because you planned to, but because something deeper than your mind remembered him. And in that moment, you realize something you've been ignoring. You miss him, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in a quiet, trembling, tearful kind of way, the kind that makes your eyes sting, even though nothing is wrong, and everything is. It's strange, isn't it? You weren't thinking about Allah a few minutes ago. You weren't making dua. You weren't listening to Quran. But your soul was, and it missed him before you even noticed. That's how gently Allah pulls you back. Not through fear, not through force, but through longing. Longing that appears in silence, in tired nights, in empty rooms, in the middle of success that still feels incomplete, or in the middle of heartbreak that still hasn't healed. It's not sadness, it's not guilt, it's remembrance without a reason. And when that longing hits, when that soft whisper of Ya Allah slips from your lips without planning, that's not random, that's not small, that's a sign that your soul is still alive. Because no matter how far you've gone, no matter how long you've been distracted, Allah never erased your name from His mercy. And when He misses you, He doesn't punish you. He awakens you from the inside out. He lets the world go quiet, so your heart finally remembers what it was always created for. Not noise, not applause, not people, Him. So the next time you feel that soft sadness, that suddenly turns into a longing, don't brush it away, don't numb it with distractions, don't silence it with scrolling. Pause, breathe, and answer it. Because that feeling, that sudden missing of Allah, is not weakness. It's the beginning of your return, and maybe, just maybe, He missed hearing your voice too. 5. You feel drawn to solitude, not because you're sad, but because you're awakening. There was a time when silence scared you. You needed people. You needed noise. You needed to be surrounded by energy, even if it drained you. Because being alone felt like being forgotten, and being forgotten felt like you didn't matter. But now, something has shifted. Quiet moments feel safer than conversations. Empty rooms feel softer than crowded ones. Solitude no longer feels like punishment. It feels like peace. You find yourself canceling plans you would have rushed toward before. You sit in your car longer after arriving home. Not because you're tired, but because that silence feels like something sacred, something only your soul understands. And when someone asks what's wrong, you can't really explain it. Because the truth is, nothing's wrong. You're not angry, you're not depressed, you're not bitter. You're just becoming. It's not sadness that's pulling you away. It's awakening. Allah is calling your soul inward, away from the noise, away from the pressure to perform, away from the version of you that needed to be seen, just to feel real. Now you crave what the world can't give. You crave your own thoughts, your own space, and moments when it's just you and Him. You find healing in being unseen. You find joy in simplicity. You find strength in sitting with your own silence. Because that silence doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels full of something holy. And maybe you don't realize it yet, but this desire for solitude, it's a sign that Allah is preparing your heart for something higher. Because before He elevates you, He isolates you, not to punish you, but to rebuild you, without the distractions, without the noise, without the pressure to be anything for anyone. In solitude, you remember who you are when no one's watching. In solitude, you remember how to talk to Allah, not with fancy words, but with soft whispers from a heart that's tired of pretending. This withdrawal you're experiencing, it's not disconnection, it's realignment. You're being tuned back to the frequency of your fitra, your original self. The self that was never meant to survive in a world addicted to noise. The self that was always meant to find strength in sujood, not in attention. So don't force yourself to reattach. Don't guilt yourself for needing space. Don't chase what your heart has outgrown. If Allah is pulling you into solitude, it's because He's about to pour something into you that the world was too loud to let you hear. You're not walking away from people. You're walking back to yourself. And deeper than that, you're walking back to Him. 6. You start looking back, but you don't feel bitter anymore. You used to look back and feel the sting. The memories weren't just stories. They were wounds. Every time you remembered, it felt like the pain was happening all over again. You'd play it all in your head. What they said, what you did, how it ended, how unfair it was. You'd lie awake at night thinking, why did that happen to me? Why didn't they see my heart? Why was I left to carry all the weight of what they broke? But now, something has changed. Slowly, quietly. And maybe you didn't notice it at first. You still remember the faces, the places, the conversations. But the sting is gone. The bitterness has faded. It's like the pain finally exhaled. You no longer want revenge. You no longer need closure. You no longer replay the past to prove your worth. Instead, you see the wisdom in it. You see how it protected you, how it shaped you, how it pushed you closer to the one who never left. The same event that once shattered you now humbles you, because you realize if it didn't happen, you wouldn't have discovered the strength you carry now. You wouldn't have cried to Allah the way you did. You wouldn't have found your voice in sujood. You wouldn't have learned how to walk away from what was never meant to stay. The past didn't just happen to hurt you. It happened to wake you, to peel away the illusions, to show you that Allah was with you, even in the moments you thought He wasn't listening. And now, when you look back, you don't ask why anymore. You say, Alhamdulillah, because even the darkness was lit by His mercy. This is how you know you're healing. Not because the memories disappeared, but because they no longer hold you hostage. You can finally remember without breaking. You can finally forgive, not because they deserve it, but because your peace deserves to be free. Allah is showing you that your story was never about staying bitter. It was about becoming better. Not loud, not perfect, just honest, just whole. So if you've started to look back and feel peace instead of pain, know that this is not weakness. This is divine maturity. It means Allah is giving you new eyes. Eyes that see mercy where you once only saw mess. Eyes that see wisdom where you once only saw loss. And most of all, eyes that now see Him. In every heartbreak, every delay, every detour that once confused you, because you weren't being punished, you were being redirected toward the version of you that knows how to rise. 7. You cry over things you never told anyone about. You're not even sure what triggered it. Maybe it was a quiet moment, a memory, a voice, a sudden wave of emotion that came out of nowhere. And you just broke. The tears started falling before you could explain why. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, slow, sacred, and no one saw it. No one heard it. Because you never told anyone what you were really carrying, the things you kept buried, The heartbreaks you downplayed, the betrayals you brushed off with a smile, the pain you convinced everyone, even yourself, that you were fine with. But you weren't fine, you were just functioning. And somewhere along the way, you stopped talking about it. Because people get uncomfortable when your pain doesn't come with neat explanations. So you stayed quiet. You laughed when you were supposed to. You said, Alhamdulillah, even when your heart was silently screaming. But Allah saw it all. And tonight, when you finally let those tears fall, not because of something new, but because of something you never healed from, that was His mercy in disguise. Because the tears you cry over things you've never spoken about are the most sacred kind. They're not for the world. They're not for sympathy. They're not for fixing. They're for release. You don't need to find the perfect words. You don't need to explain the whole story. You don't even need to understand why it still hurts. All you need to know is that Allah knows. He knew when they didn't notice. He knew when you stayed strong for everyone else. He knew when your heart was begging for relief, but your lips stayed silent. And now, He's giving you permission to feel it, to stop carrying it alone, to stop bottling it up just to be the strong one. Because even strength needs a place to collapse. And what safer place is there than in the presence of the one who never needed an explanation to hold you? That moment of breaking, where the tears flow from places you never named, is not weakness. It's intimacy with Allah, the kind of closeness that doesn't need to be spoken, the kind of closeness that makes you cry without words and still be completely understood. So let it out, not to people, but to the one who already knows. Let the tears fall. Let your chest rise and tremble. Let the ache have a voice, even if it's just a whisper of, Ya Allah, I don't know what to say, but I'm tired. Because in that moment, you are not alone. You are being witnessed. You are being softened. You are being healed. And no one has to see it for it to be sacred, because sometimes the most powerful doers are the ones soaked in tears no one else will ever see, but Allah responds to instantly. 8. You feel like you're not where you belong, but you can't explain why. You look around at your life, and nothing looks broken. People see you and think you're doing okay. You go to work, you smile when expected, you show up where you're supposed to, but deep inside, you feel it, a quiet misalignment. Like your soul is sitting in the wrong chapter of its story. It's not sadness exactly, it's not boredom, it's just this subtle, aching discomfort. Like your spirit is walking through a house that isn't yours, wearing clothes that don't fit anymore. You don't know how to explain it. You can't point to a single thing that's wrong, but still, your heart keeps whispering, this isn't it. This isn't where I'm meant to stay. And you start asking questions silently. Why do I feel so misplaced in a life I once prayed for? Why does everything feel like it fits on paper, but feels off in my heart? Why do I keep sensing that something deeper is waiting, but I don't know where or what? That feeling, that quiet restlessness that you can't explain, that's not confusion, that's guidance. Because sometimes Allah doesn't shake your world with explosions. Sometimes He stirs your soul with a whisper, a nudge, an invisible pull away from the life you're in. Because the life He's preparing for you requires a different version of you. He lets the comfort fade. He allows the joy in your current circle to disappear. He removes the sweetness from your routines so you don't settle. Because you were never meant to build a permanent home in a temporary chapter. And if you stayed here, if you forced yourself to fit into a season your soul has already outgrown, you'd start shrinking, So Allah makes it uncomfortable, not to punish you, but to wake you. He's loosening your grip on this life, so you can reach for something bigger, something purer, something that aligns not just with your plans, but with your purpose. That feeling of, I don't belong here, is a sign that your soul remembers something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. It's proof that there's more, that there's better, that you were built for something beyond where you are right now. And no, it won't make sense to the people around you. They'll say you're lucky. They'll remind you how good you have it. They'll tell you not to question what's working. But what they don't hear is the sound of your soul calling you home. Not a physical place, but a spiritual one. A state of being where your heart is aligned with your Creator, where you stop performing and start breathing, where you stop pretending and start becoming. So if you feel like you're not where you belong, even if you can't explain why, don't ignore it. Don't numb it. Don't silence it. That discomfort is not failure. It's not spiritual confusion. It's spiritual preparation. Because Allah doesn't remove your comfort without a reason. He's shifting your soul out of what you were settling for and into what you were written for. So if you've been feeling left out by everyone, let your heart hear this. You were never forgotten. You were chosen to be pulled away so you could be pulled closer. Closer to the one who knew your name before the world ever gave you one, because when Allah isolates you, He's not leaving you behind. He's preparing to walk with you into a version of life the old you couldn't survive. You weren't left out. You were called in by the one who never needed a crowd to find you.